After a photographer returns from an assignment, he or she, in this electronic age with digital photography, generally has a pretty good idea of what their best 100, 200, or 300 best pictures are.
Everybody fine with the lead picture?
They've been talking with a picture editor. They'll sit down with that picture editor to develop a selection of photographs.
Every photographer is assigned to a photo editor who guides the photographer on assignment.
My name is Gail Fisher, and I'm a senior photo editor at National Geographic magazine. I edit lots of film, but there's also lots of logistics to deal with. We're working with photographers on proposals. There's a lot of research involved. And then you're working on several stories, and they're all in various stages of the game. So you might be in layout on one story, and maybe you're at an interim on another, and you have several photographers out in the field. A lot of times photographers will shoot anywhere from 13,000 to 15,000 images, and if it's natural history, the numbers are even a lot higher than that. As I'm editing, it's a very intuitive process. You're looking at these thousands of images as you're scanning through it. There are just images that literally jump off the computer screen. It's like the stars are aligned. Everything comes together. The light's right, the moment is right, it's layered. You look at it, and it's a very complex image, maybe. And the editing process, I move several hundred forward, and then from there I'll do a second edit, and maybe I'll do a third edit before I finally come up with 40 or 50 or 60 images I want to move forward. And within that process, you're looking for new information. You're looking to cut out the redundant images. It has to tell a narrative.
National Geographic has a long-standing commitment to photograph indigenous cultures, especially indigenous cultures that are changing at a rapid pace. This photograph tends to get at the chaos, the incredible change that the Surrey people in this case are going through, but people all up and down the Omo River.
And it's photographer Randy Olson's mission to capture it.
The Omo River Valley is in southern Ethiopia. They're building a dam at the top of this valley that is going to take away their form of agriculture in 3 years. There are 20 million people north of this dam that are going to benefit, and there are 200,000 in this valley that are going to have their lives destroyed. The east-west component of the story is that there's an arms trade. There's arms coming out of the former civil war in Sudan, there's arms coming from Somalia, and this area in Ethiopia is right in the middle. This group of culturally distinct individuals will be starving and heavily armed in about 3 years. I feel when I walk into this village that I have American tattooed across my forehead, or I'm from Mars. When you're trying to work, when you're trying to explain to people why you're in their lives, you really need someone who they relate to, who can make them understand what it is that you're doing. Because of my fixer, my helper, I could be there for a couple of days and people would get comfortable and they'd go back about their business. Alcohol is a huge problem in this area. One of the things that happens when you start adding food aid into this picture, then every time they get a sack of sorghum, they have an opportunity to ferment it, and they can literally be drunk year-round. All of these things add up to be a very volatile situation. This photograph is a woman with a large clay lip plate who has come into a bar. It's at the end of the last road into the Omo Valley. After you are in this town, you're just walking. And this woman is drinking honey beer, and she is pouring the last bits onto her lip plate and licking them off. She's just finishing off a beer. And what the scene going on outside this bar is that policemen with megaphones are going up and down the main street saying, please check your AK-47s at the police station.
Randy Olson has become the kind of photographer who can endure great hardship. And great hardship is going to be experienced when you are in an area as hot, as desolate, as dusty, with virtually no infrastructure. When you look at Randy's pictures, especially this one, it illustrates the fact that her culture is undergoing dramatic changes that are probably more intense than anything her culture has gone through for hundreds of years. The first thing the photographer has to be careful of course, is bias. And even more important possibly than bias would be judgment. I selected Stephanie Sinclair's photograph of women who are members of the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints. And she has this ability and this persistence to penetrate a culture honestly, openly, with this sense of curiosity that disarms people.
To get people to be open about their lives, you kind of have to be open about yours. There's actually about 38,000 polygamists that are kind of offshoots of the mainstream Mormon church.
You'll tell me when to drop, right?
It was very difficult to get them to trust me for either piece. And it really took a lot of listening. It took some time to get them to open up and talk to us without being defensive.
You want to dry your hands?
I come Mother Joanne. Sure.
My personal interest in it, that it was, beyond just polygamy. These people definitely did this for their religious beliefs. And so how far does that go, and how do we deal with that as a country?
But today, everyone forgets the controversy and just has fun.
It was a beautiful day, and it was like a whole big family thing where, everyone had ATV kind of vehicles.
The destination, a zip line into the cold water of a stunning Arizona lake.
This is definitely, being at the right place at the right time and having worked on a story long enough to have all of the elements come together for you.
No.
When these girls started piling on top of each other and doing this pyramid, I definitely knew this was going to be some of the best pictures I had taken. And particularly when the one girl was reaching up. It just kind of had almost like a biblical reference. You don't really know what she's reaching for.
But what Stephanie has spent months reaching for, she has finally grabbed. When Chris Johns sees this photo, he knows Stephanie has captured something special.
The symbolism of that, of reaching towards heaven, here's this feeling of sisterhood and this feeling of absolute joy. That photograph could only be made by someone those women deeply, deeply trusted and had spent time with. And Stephanie is one of those people who will spend months gaining that trust to come into a culture and reveal it in ways that's never been revealed before. Every page of the April issue of National Geographic magazine is devoted to the world's freshwater supply. One place we had to go was the Middle East, where water is such an important part, not just of life, but of politics too. The Jordan River, for thousands of years, has been the lifeblood for many in the Middle East. We sent Paulo Pellegrin there, and we knew he would make the honest photographs we needed in this very combustible part of the world.
This was actually my first assignment for the National Geographic. The water wars was a special issue so that the Geographic did. I was asked to shoot on the Jordan River, which is sort of an important sort of source of fresh water. It's also a divided river, sort of 3 countries and 3 communities: the Israelis, the Palestinians, and the Jordanians. And so it has a number of social, territorial, sort of political sort of complexities to it. The Dead Sea has a strange, sort of nearly sort of metallic sort of quality to it. It's a place which is so sort of charged sort of with history and symbolisms also. It really sort of contains so much of our religious sort of, Judeo-Christian culture. This summer was over a period of probably 4 or 5 months and 2 trips. It's a territory that I know well, so that facilitated things, because it can be a little bit tricky sort of to move and navigate sort of in the West Bank. I took that picture sort of at the end of the day. The light was fading, and I was actually about to leave when this Palestinian family arrived, and 2 girls started entering the water. One of the girls entered, and she played a while sort of in the water. I was just there sort of photographing them for a while. So at one point, it was just us. So it was quite beautiful, sort of end of day, sort of with this magical sort of red light in this sort of very strange and beautiful sort of place.
Paulo's photograph has this beautiful universal appeal. Everyone, I believe, can relate to the lakeside. It has this beautiful, soft light, and all the politics and all the things that surround water in the Middle East, and it softens it. It softens that story so we can all relate to this wonderful moment with these 2 children at the Dead Sea.
I particularly like that picture. I think it represents sort of like a real moment, sort of which transcends the political sort of difficulties, and it speaks about the water, about the issues, but it also transcends them at the same time. So it's a moment of quiet, like a universal moment of a child sort of bathing in these sort of sacred waters.
This particular story was primarily done in Cairo and at the Valley of the Kings in Luxor. I'm a photographer with National Geographic magazine, and I do a lot of work on the origin of civilizations. The hardest part of this was the access. In that tomb, deep underground, it's hot and sweaty and humid, and there was a great deal of stress in the situation.
Kenneth's assignment is to photograph the mummies while scientists conduct DNA tests to identify the royal family. The bodies can only be exposed to open air for short periods of time, giving Kenneth just minutes to get each shot.
The total amount of time that we had with Queen T might have been 10 minutes. They would open the box, we'd get that mummy, we'd say done, and he'd be gone. We were finished, there's no backing up. We have to be really careful not to contaminate them or to reach into the box and touch them. So we'll prepare all of our lights ahead of time. It was in that side chamber, in the burial chamber, a little side room, where these 4 mummies were laying. When they took those mummies out, cleaned them up, and went to do the DNA test, they put them on the little wooden benches. And we came up with a lighting solution for that box. And then once we took that picture, we were stuck with that lighting scenario, regardless of what the other boxes looked like. We had to match that first picture. The workers brought out this particular mummy, which is our Queen T, and it was on a wooden bench, and it was covered with a sheet. And they laid it on the little table that we had set up with the lights. And when they pulled back the cloth, it was just astonishing. It was, to me, like the most beautiful mummy I'd ever seen. She had the red hair. Her skin was in perfect condition for someone that's 3,500 years old.
Ken said, she's just beautiful. And of course, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
I just wanted to stand there and stare at her and look at her, and then I thought, well, we better keep moving, we got work to do. One of the most rewarding things was to see the family come together photographically. Maybe that's the goal of all these pictures. When you open the magazine, you go, wow, what's that? And then the reader needs to know more about it, and then that's when they read the story.
Here's Queen T, magnificently lit, large format photography, every detail so finely brought before us. Who would have known she was Tut's grandmother? And to meet her in this way and then to discover through DNA what her relationship is with this incredibly famous person, King Tut, made this a picture we simply had to pick for the top 10. My favorite picture for 2010 was made in the mountains of Afghanistan by Lindsay Dario.
My assignment in Afghanistan was to photograph women in Afghanistan. It was something that National Geographic really hasn't done before. Doing the story many, many times. I mean, I was reduced to tears.
With good reason. Women in Afghanistan are seemingly invisible in a land dominated by the Taliban and war.
You just repeatedly listen to women tell the story of how they've been beaten and how they set themselves on fire, and all I can do is tell their story.
Like many great pictures, this one unfolds by accident.
We were driving along the side of the road from 5 or 6 days covering maternal health. The number of women who die in childbirth is the second highest in the world. I saw 2 women on the side of the mountain. That is quite unusual to see 2 women on the side of a mountain without a man. And so I told the driver to stop the car, and I got out and ran up to the 2 women, and it turned out that one was in labor and her water had just broken. So I sent my driver to go find the husband. They left me sitting with the 2 women, and of course I couldn't communicate at all, so I was just sort of sitting there and trying to photograph, but it's also very uncomfortable to photograph a woman when she's in labor and she's so uncomfortable being photographed, and so it was this very awkward sort of scene.
But Lindsay's years of experience in Afghanistan make this picture possible. In it, photographer and the moment come together. For all the sad scenes she has witnessed, this story, at least, ends happily.
I ended up taking both women and putting them in my car with the husband of the woman who was about to deliver, and we drove them to the hospital, and there she delivered safely.
Afghanistan is a country that is incredibly dangerous to photograph in, but it's also a place that I believe will experience more turmoil if women are not respected, if someone doesn't stop at the side of the road to give them a ride. And Lindsay Addario did that, and in the process made a magnificent picture that's worthy on hanging on a museum wall. What we want people to take away from the top 10 photos is an appreciation and an understanding of the world. And photography can do that as a universal language in a way that we really believe in. There's an old expression, tell me what you see, tell me what you feel. And that's what our photographers do superbly.